Growing up on a Native American reserve, I was already used to the tales of scary beings, souls, and etc. that our parents and grandparents passed down to us from time to time. By age 13, I could recite to you every story they have by heart. My grandmother has always been into the supernatural of the spirit world and what have you. She was always such a sweet woman, kind-hearted, loved to dance, and tell us all of the stories she could remember. She loved scaring the word out of us when she could. But as of recently, she's been kind of distant. When I say distant, I mean she's barely even there at all. She never dances anymore, and she doesn't tell us stories. My parents were starting to get worried about her well-being. They constantly asked her to please talk to us, to tell us what happened. But all she did was sit in that chair in the corner of the living room and stare out the window. Then one day, my parents were both at work, and I was going to be the only one with my grandmother after school. I walked into the house, threw my heavy green book bag on the floor, and lazily headed upstairs to my room. I made it about halfway when I stopped dead in my tracks, heart beating fast with excitement. I ran back downstairs to make sure it was true. My grandmother was no longer sitting in that big blue chair. She was standing. But she was standing now so close to the living room window that I could see the small humidity circle that occurs from her breathing on the glass form and disappear with each breath. I walked over to her and asked, "Grandmother, are you alright?" I stuttered because the closer I got, the more airy this all became. Her face, as if it was not enough already, became more grave, and she let out a long, slow breath. But in that breath, I caught her saying something. She said, "We call him the Windwalker." I had no idea what she was talking about. She turned to me, the same deep-set look on her face, and turned to look of surprise. She opened her eyes so wide that the wrinkles at the corners smoothed out. She looked at me and said, "Come while I tell you the last story of our tribe." I was confused. I thought I had heard every story possibly told, but I guess I was wrong. I know I said I've told you every story, but I've kept this one secret because how extraordinarily harmful it can be. You cannot say his name after I tell you. Promise me, Charlie. I promised her, and she went on with her story. Long ago, back when I was a girl, there was the story of the man we called Windwalker. He was tall, and though not entirely sure he was a human, we called him one. He was never seen in direct sunlight, or any light that I can recall. But he always had a shadow. Or maybe in fact, he was the shadow. But that doesn't really matter. He was tall and slender. He had long lanky arms, in which were attached razor-sharp pointed fingers. His legs were just as lanky, but I never saw any feet. His eyes were pure white in the day and bright red at night. He came to town for one purpose and one purpose only: to steal our souls. At this point, I knew it was nonsense, and my grandmother could tell. I'm not lying to you, Charlie. I absolutely need you to believe me. I nodded, swallowed hard, for I did not want to believe her, and continued to listen. As I was saying, he stole souls. And when he stole these souls, he threw them into the wind for him to eventually follow after in suit. But when he took one soul, he replaced it with another. Perhaps one of his friends from the underworld. I'm not quite sure. He would appear during the day in the tree lines, and he would wait all day until dark. In the sunlight and the light we were safe, but in the darkness, his breeze could travel to us. One night, it was very dark. A storm was brewing from the east, and I, being very young, loved to stay up and watch the lightning with my brother. We played in the living room looking out this same window and played and laughed at what the lightning could possibly be and what I may have struck. But all of the fun was over when we saw the Windwalker hiding in the bush over there. He was gradually getting closer once he saw that we had spotted him. We called to our parents, but they knew what was coming of him, and they knew that as long as we were in the light, we were safe. My brother and I relaxed and went back to playing our games and laughing about until we noticed the Windwalker in the middle of our yard. I couldn't make out why he kept getting closer when he knew there was light in the house. He finally reached the window, and in that instant, a bolt of lightning struck down in front of our eyes and into the power lines. There was nothing but darkness all around us, and we knew what that meant. My brother and I ran to our parents, who started trying their hardest to light a fire in the fireplace. They had sent my brother out to get more wood, but that was a mistake. We heard screaming from the backyard and we ran back to see what was the matter. But all we saw was my sweet, sweet brother, drenched in sweat, and his body all contorted and limp on the ground. We knew then that his soul had been taken, and yet for some reason was not replaced. I was still trying to wrap my head around all of this. The new story, such a personal story. The fact that my grandmother had a brother when he was never in any pictures that we saw. So finally I asked her, "That was such a sad and unfortunate story, grandmother. But I have to ask, why are you telling me this?" "You see, my grandchild, I finally understand. We buried my brother's body in the backyard under that tree. It was his favorite. And after all was said and done, we moved on with our lives. But look out there, my sweet Charlie boy. Tell me, what do you see?" I see the tree, the rest of the forest, and a storm brewing. I don't get it, grandmother. What do you understand?" "Oh, my sweet Charlie boy. I hope you have enough wood to start a fire." My heart dropped when she said this, for I knew what was coming. Why do we need to light a fire?" "Because, Charlie, my brother didn't die. The Windwalker replaced my brother's soul with his own, and he's standing right above his grave."